Elise Monroe's breath caught as she stood before the locked Asheville home. Her sister, Lauren's message. "You're not part of this family anymore," echoed like a cold blade against her heart. A lawyer's email had revealed Vivian's trust, a hidden inheritance stolen by the very people Elise once called family. The house, once her sanctuary, now stood as a silent witness to lies, betrayal, and a truth powerful enough to set her free. Clutching Vivian's pendant tightly in her palm, Elise felt a fire ignite within her. This wasn't just a fight for a house, it was a war for her dreams, her truth, and her identity. If you followed the story this far and felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of being cast aside, just like Elise Monroe, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next dramatic chapter of this unfolding story. And please leave your Evie. There are still so many secrets buried behind the walls of that house. Let's uncover them together. Watch the next part right now. The Asheville dusk cast long shadows across the colonial facade of the family home, its white pillars gleaming like sentinels of a life Elise Monroe, 29, no longer belonged to. She stood on the porch, her key useless in a lock that had been changed overnight, her phone trembling in her hand with a text from her sister Lauren, 5 years her senior. "You're not part of this family anymore. Don't come back." The words were a psychological guillotine severing Elise from the only home she'd ever known. Psychologically, she embodied the archetype of the exiled dreamer, her spirit shaped by years of chasing a vision her family deemed frivolous, now cast out by the very people who should have been her refuge. "I thought I knew betrayal," she thought, "but this is a wound I didn't see coming." Her knocks echoed unanswered, the silence louder than Lauren's venom, a prelude to a truth that would unravel her world. The house, a modern 2-story colonial, was a monument to the Monroe family's ambition, its polished exterior masking a pressure cooker of expectations. Inside, Elise had always been the outlier, her dreams of fashion design clashing with the real estate empire her parents Evelyn and Richard Monroe had built. Lauren, the archetype of the golden heir, thrived in their world. Her every success, top grades, closed, deals a seamless ascent into Monroe Realty, celebrated with fervor. Evelyn, with her hawk-like focus, orchestrated the family's legacy, while Richard, quiet and deferential, balanced the books and nodded to her decrees. Elise, however, was the anomaly, her sketchbooks and fabric swatches a rebellion against their vision of a Hayes woman. Her grandmother Vivian Monroe had been her sanctuary, the only one who saw her spark. "Don't let them clip your wings," Elise Vivian would whisper, her hands steady as they sketched together her stories of unfulfilled dreams. A lifeline in a house that demanded conformity. Vivian's death from cancer when Elise was 16 left a void that never healed. Lauren, then 21, stepped into the void with a chilling authority, taking charge of family decisions as if anointed. Evelyn and Richard handed her the reins, their pride in her eclipsing Elise's existence. Dinner conversations revolved around Lauren's triumphs. Another deal closed, Evelyn would beam, while Elise's design contests and art club awards were dismissed as hobbies. "Real estate is your future." Evelyn would declare her tone final as Lauren smirked and Richard stared at his plate. Elise fought back, posting her designs online, winning small accolades from strangers who saw what her family refused to. But each victory tightened their grip, their insistence on a business degree at UNC, crushing her hopes of studying fashion at Parsons. "I compromised," she thought, "and it cost me everything." College was a battleground. Elise majored in business but minored in design, working nights at a boutique to fund her passion. Lauren, already a star at Monroe Realty, mocked her efforts, still playing with scissors, while Evelyn sighed about wasted potential. After graduation, Elise landed a job at a Charlotte fashion startup, a flicker of Vivian's dream realized. The pay was meager, but the work was hers. Home visits were tense, filled with Lauren's barbs and Evelyn's hints about joining the family business. When the startup collapsed, leaving Elise jobless and broke, she had no choice but to return to Asheville, promising 6 months to rebuild. The house became a prison, Lauren setting rules, curfews, chores, rent Elise could barely afford from freelance gigs. "You're mooching," Lauren hissed, catching her sketching late at night. Evelyn's scrutiny and Richard's silence were suffocating their expectations, a noose around her dreams. The final blow came 3 weeks ago after a heated argument. Elise pitched a digital strategy for Monroe Realty virtual tours, a social media campaign hoping to prove her worth. Lauren laughed. Stick to your crayons as Evelyn nodded and Richard looked away. The fight erupted that night, Elise calling out Lauren's control, her jealousy of Vivian's faith in her. Vivian was wrong about you. Lauren spat her words, a dagger. Elise stormed out, spending the night in a motel, texting Lauren the next morning to talk. She never expected the locks to change her key useless, her life trapped inside. The text, "You're not part of this family anymore," was a psychological execution the exiled dreamer cast out without warning. Through the kitchen window, she saw Lauren moving dishes indifferent to her presence. "She knew I was here," Elise thought, and she didn't care. Desperate, Elise called her cousin Nathan Porter in Charlotte. "Check your texts," he said, his voice heavy. The message from Lauren confirmed her banishment, her belongings boxed for pickup. "They erased me," she thought, rage and grief colliding. At the motel, her phone dead without its charger, she checked her bank account on the motel's Wi-Fi. The joint account with Lauren meant for shared expenses was empty, $850, withdrawn by Lauren, the primary holder. The betrayal was a psychological gut punch, stripping Elise of home and security. She drove back to the house, hoping to confront someone, but found it empty, the windows mocking her with their normalcy. A neighbor, Mrs. Kessler, waved, her concern evident. "Everything okay?" she asked. Elise forced a smile, humiliation burning. "Just locked out," she mumbled, driving away, her world shrinking to the motel's peeling walls. That night, an email from Walsh & Foster law firm stopped her heart-urgent Vivian Monroe. Trust. It mentioned a trust Elise never knew existed, tied to her grandmother. Vivian, she thought, what did you do? The email listed a number for Edward Walsh, promising answers. Sleep evaded her, Clara's voice echoing, "Promise me you'll keep designing." Had Vivian foreseen this betrayal? The next morning, Elise drove to the law firm's sleek office, her borrowed blazer, a thin shield against her unraveling life. Edward Walsh, silver-haired and sharp-suited, greeted her with calm authority. "I represent the Vivian Monroe Trust," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "Your grandmother insured your place in the family home and a fund for your fashion designs." Elise's breath caught. The house belonged to a trust, her access guaranteed, and $120,000 meant for her career had been drained by Lauren and her parents for renovations. "They stole from me," she thought, the exiled dreamer awakening as the truth seeker. Vivian had built a fortress, and Elise was ready to wield its power. The motel room's dim light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the peeling wallpaper as Elise Monroe sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the USB drive Edward Walsh had given her. Its contents, a letter from her grandmother Vivian and the Vivian Monroe Trust documents, were a psychological lifeline, pulling her from the abyss of betrayal. The letter's opening lines burned in her mind. "My dearest Elise, if you're reading this, they've tried to break you, and for that, I'm sorry." Vivian's voice, fierce and tender, echoed through the years, resurrecting the archetype of the exiled dreamer within Elise. Psychologically, she stood at a crossroads, the weight of her sister Lauren's text, "You're not part of this family anymore," clashing with Vivian's faith in her resilience. She saw this coming, Elise thought, and she gave me a way to fight back. The trust documents were a revelation, detailing Vivian's foresight. The Asheville family home belonged to the trust, with Elise's right to reside there, inalienable, and a $120,000 fund designated for her fashion design pursuits had been plundered by Lauren and their parents, Evelyn and Richard, for home renovations. A gourmet kitchen, a master suite, a backyard deck. The betrayal was a psychological sledgehammer, transforming the exiled dreamer into the truth seeker, driven not by vengeance, but by a need to honor Vivian's legacy. Elise's hands trembled as she read the financial summary. The numbers, a stark accusation, $120,000, siphoned over 4 years, her dreams sacrificed for her family's luxury. "They didn't just lock me out," she thought, "they stole my future." Elise called her cousin Nathan Porter, needing an anchor. "Did you know about this trust?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Nathan hesitated, his tone heavy. "Not the details, but Grandma Vivian talked about you before she passed. She said Lauren was jealous, always had been, because Vivian gave you her sketchbooks. Her heart. The pieces clicked. Lauren's snide remarks, her fury when Elise mentioned Vivian, stemmed from a resentment rooted in childhood. Lauren tried to get Vivian to change her will. Nathan added, but she wouldn't budge. Elise's pulse quickened, the truth-seeker stirring. Vivian had anticipated Lauren's control, her parents' complicity, and built a fortress to protect her. I won't let her down, she vowed, the motel's stale air no match for the fire in her chest. Edward Walsh arranged a meeting at his firm's office for Tuesday, 5 days after the trust's revelation, a neutral battleground for the confrontation ahead. Focus on the facts, Elise, he said over the phone, his voice steady. The trust is your shield. Elise spent the intervening days poring over the documents, memorizing every violation, the changed locks a direct breach of her residency rights, the drained fund a fiduciary betrayal. She called Nathan, ensuring his presence. I've got you, Elise, he said. Vivian would want you to stand tall. His support was a psychological buoy, but the thought of facing Lauren's icy glare and her parents' silence knotted her stomach. Tuesday morning, Elise arrived at Walsh & Foster's glass-walled office, her borrowed blazer, a fragile armor against the storm within. The conference room was stark, its mahogany table and Blue Ridge mountain views, a stark contrast to the tension coiling inside her. Edward greeted her, introducing Ms. Carter, an associate taking notes, and a financial advisor with audit records. At 10:00 a.m., the door swung open. Lauren strode in her chin, high eyes cold as steel. Evelyn and Richard followed, their faces guarded, trailed by their lawyer, Ms. Foster, a family friend whose smile was all teeth. Nathan slipped in, last, his nod a quiet reassurance. Courtney sat her nails, a deliberate distraction, while Evelyn gripped her purse, knuckles white, and Richard stared at the table, his jaw tight. Edward opened with precision. We're here to address breaches of the Vivian Monroe Trust, denying Elise's residency rights and misusing her designated funds. He distributed the trust documents, their pages heavy with truth. Changing the locks violates Elise's guaranteed access to the home. Ms. Foster leaned forward, her tone smooth. My clients regret any misunderstanding, but this was a family matter, not a breach. Edward's gaze was unrelenting. Barring a beneficiary for 5 days without remedy is no misunderstanding. The financial advisor displayed a spreadsheet, its figures damning $120,000 diverted for renovations. Elise's voice broke the silence, sharp and unyielding. Used my money, Lauren. Vivian's money for your kitchen, your deck while I was homeless. Lauren's eyes flared. You benefited from those upgrades, Elise. Don't play victim. Elise held her gaze. I'm done shrinking, she thought. Benefited, I was locked out with nothing. Evelyn interjected, her voice wavering. We were thinking of the family's future, Elise. Richard nodded, his silence a louder betrayal. Ms. Foster pivoted. These were oversights, not intentional. Edward's reply was steel. Diverting funds meant for Elise's career without her consent is a violation, not an oversight. Nathan's voice cut through, calm but piercing. Vivian told me about the trust. She wanted Elise safe, especially from Lauren's jealousy. The room stilled. Lauren's face paled, her hands clenching the table. That's ridiculous, she spat, but her voice shook. Nathan pressed on. Vivian said you resented her giving Elise her sketchbooks, her trust. You pressured her to cut Elise out. Evelyn's breath hitched, Richard's composure cracked, his eyes darting to Lauren. Edward seized the moment, distributing Vivian's letter, its words raw. Lauren's jealousy and your complicity, Evelyn and Richard, could break Elise. This trust is her wings. Lauren's defiance wilted as she read, her fingers trembling. Elise spoke, her voice steady despite the storm inside. You've controlled me my whole life, Lauren, Evelyn, Richard. You buried my dreams, stole my money, and locked me out when I needed you most. You betrayed Vivian's trust in you. Lauren's eyes blazed. You're selfish, Elise. We gave you a home and you wasted it on your drawings. Elise didn't flinch. They're not drawings. They're my life. Vivian understood, even if you never will. Evelyn's tears fell, her voice breaking. We wanted you to thrive, Elise. Elise shook her head. You wanted me to be Lauren. That's not love, it's control. Richard's silence was a confession, his shame palpable. Edward outlined a proposal: the trust would purchase a condo for Elise using the misused funds, an independent trustee would oversee the family home, and all contact would cease. Lauren's breath sharpened. What if we refuse? She asked. Edward's reply was cold. Removal as trustees, recovery of funds, possible eviction. Ms. Foster conferred with Lauren, Evelyn, and Richard, their whispers tense. After a pause, she nodded. We'll review within 48 hours. As they left, Evelyn's eyes pleaded, but Elise met them unflinching. You made your choices, she thought. Nathan's hand on her shoulder was a lifeline. Vivian would be proud, he said. Elise clutched the trust documents, the exiled dreamer, now the truth seeker, ready to reclaim her place. The Asheville skyline glowed under a waning moon as Elise Monroe drove back to the motel, the weight of the meeting at Walsh & Foster's office still pressing against her chest. The conference room's tension, Lauren's icy glare, Evelyn's tearful pleas, Richard's mute shame, lingered like a bruise. Psychologically, Elise was the archetype of the truth seeker, her resolve forged in the fire of Vivian's trust and the betrayal of her family's actions. The documents in her bag, Vivian's letter, and the trust's damning evidence were a psychological shield, protecting her from the narrative Lauren had spun that Elise was a failure, a leech unworthy of their legacy. They stole more than money, she thought. They tried to steal my truth. Yet Vivian's words, "You're stronger than you know," burned in her mind, a beacon guiding her through the storm. Back in the motel's dim room, Elise plugged the USB drive into her phone's adapter, rereading Vivian's letter. The house is yours to call home, always. The fund is for your designs, your heart's work. The words were a psychological anchor grounding the exiled dreamer in a purpose her family had denied. The trust's financial summary detailing $120,000 siphoned for renovations was a betrayal that cut deeper with each glance. Lauren's text, "You're not part of this family anymore," had been a calculated strike. But the drained fund was a theft of Elise's future, a violation Vivian had anticipated. She knew they'd try to break me. Elise thought, her fingers tracing the letter's edges. The archetype of the restorer stirred, urging her to reclaim not just the house, but her right to dream. Elise called Nathan Porter, her cousin, needing his steady voice. "You were incredible today," he said, his tone warm. Vivian would have been cheering. Elise's throat tightened. "Did she ever tell you why she trusted me with this?" Nathan paused, his voice softening. "She said you had her fire, Elise. Lauren was always jealous of that, Vivian's sketchbooks, her sewing kit, the way she lit up around you." The revelation was a psychological key unlocking memories of Lauren's snide remarks, her resentment when Vivian gifted Elise her old design tools. Lauren tried to rewrite Vivian's will, Nathan added, but Vivian held firm. She knew Lauren would turn on you. Elise's resolve hardened. "I'm not just fighting for me," she thought, "I'm fighting for her." The next morning, Elise drove to the family home, hoping to retrieve her belongings before the 48-hour deadline for Lauren's response. The Colonial loomed, its windows cold, the new locks a silent taunt. Mrs. Kessler, the neighbor, waved from her yard, her eyes sharp with concern. "Elise, I told Walsh's contact about the lock," she confessed. "Vivian asked me to watch over you years ago." The admission was a psychological jolt, revealing Vivian's foresight. She built a network to protect me. Elise realized the truth seeker bolstered by allies she hadn't known she had. Mrs. Kessler handed her a small box, Vivian's handwriting on the lid, "For Elise, when you need courage." Inside was a silver pendant engraved with a wing and a note, "Fly my dreamer." Elise's eyes burned, the pendant a talisman of Vivian's faith. Back at the motel, Elise opened her laptop using the Wi-Fi to job hunt her applications, a lifeline to independence. She emailed the fashion brand from her recent interview, hoping for an update, but the auto reply promised a response next week. The uncertainty gnawed, but Vivian's pendant around her neck steadied her. "I'm not invisible anymore," she thought. She drafted a vision for her future, a fashion brand, Vivian's thread inspired by her grandmother's sketches and Asheville's vibrant art scene. The trust's fund, once restored, would fuel it. The archetype of the restorer grew stronger, her dreams no longer a hobby, but a legacy to build. Lauren's response came at the 47th hour, a curt email from Ms. Foster. We'll negotiate, but we need time. The delay was a psychological tactic, the golden heir stalling to maintain control. Elise forwarded it to Edward Walsh, who called immediately. They're cornered, he said. The trust safeguards Vivian's letter, the financial audit, Mrs. Kessler's report are airtight. They'll sign or face eviction and legal action. Elise's pulse quickened, the truth seeker ready for the next battle. What if they push back? She asked. Edward's voice was steel. We push harder. Vivian's wishes will stand. The call ended, but the weight of the fight lingered, a mix of fear and fire. That evening, Elise found a hidden sketchbook in her motel bag, one of Vivian's tucked away during her last visit home. Its pages were filled with designs, bold, vibrant gowns inspired by the Blue Ridge Mountains, notes in Vivian's hand, for Elise to finish what I started. The discovery was a psychological thunderclap affirming Vivian's belief in her. Elise traced the sketches, her fingers trembling. She saw my future before I did, she thought. She photographed the pages, sending them to Walsh as further evidence of Vivian's intent. The restorer within her burned brighter, her purpose clear, to honor Vivian's vision by building her own. A knock at the motel door startled her. Nathan stood there, his eyes soft but urgent. I found something in my attic, he said, handing her a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. Vivian gave these to my mom before she passed for you. The letters were from Vivian to Elise, written during her illness. You're my legacy, Elise. Don't let them dim your light. Each word was a psychological shield, fortifying Elise against Lauren's venom. Nathan lingered, his voice low. Lauren's scared, Elise. She knows she's losing control. The insight was a spark, revealing Lauren's jealousy as fear, not strength. She's not invincible. Elise realized, the exiled dreamer, shedding her fear. The next morning, Elise met with Walsh at his office, the glass building, a stark contrast to her unraveling world. They're offering a partial settlement, he said, sliding a document across the desk. A condo, but no oversight of the home's trust. Elise shook her head, her voice firm. Vivian's terms are clear. Full oversight, or we go to court. Walsh nodded, a glint of respect in his eyes. You're Vivian's heir in every way. The truth seeker stood tall, her resolve unyielding. She handed over the sketchbook and letters, each a nail in Lauren's narrative. These show Vivian's intent, she said. She wanted me free, not tethered to their control. As she left, a black SUV idled across the street, its tinted windows a silent threat. The archetype of the pursued stirred, but Elise didn't flinch. She wore Vivian's pendant, its wing a reminder of her strength. They can watch, she thought, but they can't stop me. Back at the motel, she sketched, her pen moving with purpose, Vivian's designs blending with her own. The restorer was building not just a brand, but a life free of Lauren's shadow. Vivian's letter echoed, "You're stronger than you know." Elise was ready not just to win, but to redefine what victory meant. A home, a dream, a truth that no lock could bar. The Asheville night was heavy with the scent of rain, the motel's flickering neon sign casting a ghostly glow across Elise Monroe's face as she sat on the bed, Vivian's sketchbook open in her lap. The pages filled with bold designs and her grandmother's handwritten notes. For Elise to carry forward were a psychological beacon, illuminating a path through the darkness of betrayal. Psychologically, Elise was the archetype of the truth seeker, her resolve sharpened by the Vivian Monroe. Trust's revelations, the family home was hers by right, and the $120,000 fund meant for her fashion dreams had been stolen by her sister Lauren and their parents, Evelyn and Richard. The text from Lauren. You're not part of this family anymore, still burned. But Vivian's pendant around her neck, its engraved wing glinting, was a talisman of defiance. They tried to erase me, she thought, but Vivian gave me the tools to fight back. The black SUV's presence lingered in her mind, its tinted windows a silent threat spotted again near the motel. The archetype of the pursued stirred a primal unease, but Elise pushed it down, focusing on the sketchbook's pages. Vivian's designs, vibrant gowns inspired by the Blue Ridge Mountains, blended with Elise's own, a vision for her brand, Vivian's Thread. The restorer within her was awakening not just to reclaim her place, but to build a legacy that honored her grandmother's faith. She emailed Edward Walsh, attaching photos of the sketchbook and Vivian's letters, each a testament to her intent. "These prove she meant this for me," Elise wrote, her fingers steady. Walsh's reply was swift. "This strengthens our case. They're running out of moves." Elise's phone buzzed with a message from Nathan Porter. Her cousin Lauren's rattled. "She called me fishing for info. Stay sharp." The insight was a psychological key revealing Lauren's control as a facade cracking under pressure. She's not the golden heir anymore. Elise thought she's scared. Nathan's support, rooted in Vivian's trust, was a lifeline, but the weight of facing her family again knotted her stomach. She called Mrs. Kessler, the neighbor who'd alerted Walsh's contact about the changed locks. "Vivian asked me to keep an eye on you," Mrs. Kessler said, her voice warm but firm. She knew Lauren's jealousy could turn ugly. The revelation deepened Elise's resolve, the truth seeker, fortified by Vivian's foresight. "She built a net to catch me," Elise thought, "and I won't fall." The next morning, Elise drove to Walsh and Foster's office, the glass building, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. Edward greeted her, his silver hair catching the light, and handed her a revised proposal from Lauren's lawyer, Miss Foster. "They're offering a condo and partial repayment of the fund," he said, "but no trustee oversight of the home." Elise's jaw tightened. "That's not enough," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. Vivian's terms were absolute, full oversight, full accountability. Edward nodded, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "We'll counter with a court filing if they don't comply by tomorrow." Elise handed over a folder with Vivian's letters and sketchbook photos, each page a brick in her case. "She wanted me free," Elise said, "and I'm not settling for less." Back at the motel, Elise found a small package slipped under her door, no sender listed. Inside was a note in Vivian's handwriting, "Elise, for when you doubt." It was accompanied by a fabric swatch, a deep indigo silk Vivian had once used for a dress design. The gesture was a psychological anchor, a reminder of their shared dreams. "She's still with me," Elise thought, her eyes burning, as she tucked the swatch into her sketchbook. She spent the evening sketching, her pen moving with purpose, blending Vivian's mountain-inspired gowns with her own modern edge. The act was meditative, the restorer weaving a future from the threads of the past. Lauren's next move came at midnight, a voicemail dripping with calculated softness. "Elise, let's talk. We can work this out as a family." The word family was a psychological dagger twisting in the wound of her lockout. Elise didn't respond, forwarding the message to Walsh. "She's desperate," she thought, "but I'm done bending." The black SUV appeared again, idling closer to the motel, its presence a psychological weight. Elise photographed it, sending the image to Walsh with a note. "They're watching me." His reply was immediate. "We're filing for a protective order. Stay vigilant." The pursued archetype tightened its grip, but Vivian's pendant steadied her. "They can't scare me into silence," she thought. The next day, Elise met with a local fashion mentor, Sarah Klein, recommended by the design firm from her interview. Sarah's studio, filled with fabric bolts and mood boards, was a haven of possibility. "Your portfolio has grit," Sarah said, flipping through Elise's sketches. "There's a story here, something raw. Build on it." Elise shared her vision for Vivian's thread, inspired by Vivian's designs and Asheville's art scene. Sarah's eyes lit up. "Apply for the Regional Fashion Accelerator," she urged. "It's a launchpad for new brands." Elise's heart raced, the restorer, seeing a path forward. She spent the afternoon drafting an application, her sketches infused with Vivian's spirit, each line a defiance of Lauren's dismissal. A call from Walsh interrupted her work. "They've countered again," he said. "Full condo purchase, partial fund repayment, and limited trustee oversight." Elise's resolve hardened. "No," she said. "Vivian's terms, or we go to court." Walsh's voice held a smile. "You're as fierce as she was." He promised to escalate, citing the SUV's presence and Vivian's evidence. Elise hung up, her pulse steady but fierce. The truth seeker was no longer pleading for a place, she was demanding it. She found another letter in Vivian's bundle, dated a year before her death. "Elise, they'll try to mold you, but you're not clay. You're fire." The words were a psychological torch lighting her path. That evening, Nathan visited bringing coffee and a warning. "Lauren's talking to a new lawyer," he said. "She's furious about the trustee oversight." Elise nodded, the truth seeker unfazed. "Let her fight," she said. "Vivian's truth is stronger." Nathan's eyes softened. "You're different, Elise. Stronger." The compliment was a psychological balm easing the sting of years spent unseen. "I'm not invisible anymore," she thought, the exiled dreamer fading as the restorer took root. She showed Nathan her accelerator application, the sketches vibrant with Vivian's legacy. "This is what she wanted for me," Elise said, her voice steady. "A life I choose." As Nathan left, the SUV's headlights flashed across the motel parking lot, then vanished. The pursued archetype lingered, but Elise clutched Vivian's pendant, its wing a reminder of her strength. She sketched late into the night, the motel's walls no longer a prison, but a canvas for her rebirth. Vivian's letter echoed, "You're stronger than you know." The truth seeker was ready not just to reclaim her place, but to redefine it, a home, a brand, a life built on her terms, unyielding to the shadows of betrayal. The Asheville dawn broke with a soft glow filtering through the motel's thin curtains as Elise Monroe sat cross-legged on the bed, Vivian's pendant warm against her chest. The sketchbook lay open, its pages, a tapestry of her grandmother's mountain-inspired designs, woven with Elise's bold, modern strokes, a blueprint for Vivian's thread, the fashion brand she was determined to build. Psychologically, Elise was the archetype of the restorer, her spirit no longer tethered to the betrayal of her sister Lauren's text, "You're not part of this family anymore," but lifted by Vivian's trust, a fortress of documents and dreams that shielded her from her family's lies. The black SUV's fleeting appearances, its tinted windows, a silent menace had stirred the pursued archetype, but Elise's resolve was unshaken. They can watch, she thought, but they can't stop what Vivian started. The weight of the impending legal battle pressed against her, but Vivian's letter, "You're fire, not clay," was a psychological torch illuminating her path. Edward Walsh's latest call had confirmed Lauren's counteroffer, a condo partial repayment of the $120,000 stolen from Elise's creative fund and limited trustee oversight of the family home. Elise had rejected it, her voice firm, Vivian's terms or court. Walsh's response was steady. "We're filing tomorrow if they don't comply." The truth seeker within her was no longer pleading for scraps of belonging. She was demanding justice not just for herself, but for the grandmother who had seen her when no one else did. "I'm not invisible anymore," she thought, the exiled dreamer fading as the restorer took root. Elise's phone buzzed with an email from the Fashion Accelerator program, her heart leaping as she read, "Congratulations, Elise Monroe. Your application for Vivian's thread has been accepted." The words were a psychological lifeline, validation from a world beyond her family's control. The program offered mentors, fabric suppliers, and a platform to launch her brand, a chance to honor Vivian's legacy with designs that blended their shared vision. She called Sarah Klein her mentor, who cheered, "This is your moment, Elise. Show them what you're made of." The encouragement was a spark igniting the restorer's vision. "Vivian's with me," she thought, sketching a gown inspired by the Blue Ridge's twilight hues, each line a defiance of Lauren's dismissal. "Stick to your crayons." A knock at the motel door startled her. Mrs. Kessler stood there, her eyes soft but urgent, holding a small journal. "Vivian gave this to me years ago," she said. "She said you'd need it when the time came." The journal was Vivian's, its pages, filled with notes on a dream she'd never shared, a community space for young designers, a haven for dreamers like Elise. "She was building this for me." Elise realized the restorer's purpose deepening. She photographed the pages, sending them to Walsh as further evidence of Vivian's intent. Mrs. Kessler lingered, her voice low. "Vivian knew Lauren's jealousy would hurt you. She told me to watch, to act, if it did." The revelation was a psychological anchor, Vivian's foresight, a net woven across years to catch her granddaughter's fall. Lauren's next move came at dusk, a text laced with false warmth. "Elise, let's meet. We can settle this quietly." The opportunist archetype was clear, Lauren's desperation cloaked in familial concern. Elise didn't respond, forwarding the message to Walsh. She's scared, she thought, and she should be. The black SUV appeared again, idling across the motel parking lot, its headlights a silent threat. Elise's pulse quickened, the pursued archetype stirring, but she snapped a photo, sending it to Walsh with a note, "They're still watching." His reply was immediate, protective order filed. "We're ready." The restorer stood firm, Vivian's pendant, a reminder of her strength. The next morning, Elise drove to the family home, hoping to retrieve her belongings before the trust's deadline. The colonial loomed its windows, dark, the new locks a mocking barrier. She knocked, her heart pounding, but no one answered. Through the kitchen window, she saw her sketchbook stacked in a box, her life reduced to cardboard. Rage surged, but she steadied herself, the truth seeker refusing to break. She called Nathan, who arrived within the hour, his pickup truck a lifeline. "Lauren's avoiding you," he said, helping her load the boxes. "She knows she's losing." The confirmation was a psychological boost, Lauren's control slipping like sand through her fingers. Vivian's truth is stronger, Elise thought, clutching a box with her grandmother's sewing kit inside. Back at the motel, Elise unpacked each item, a piece of herself reclaimed. She found a note tucked in the sewing kit, Vivian's handwriting. Bold, Elise. "Your designs are your voice. Speak loud." The words were a psychological thunderclap, urging her to push forward. She spent the evening refining her accelerator application, her sketches vibrant with Vivian's spirit and her own resolve. The restorer was building not just a brand, but a life free of her family's shadow. She emailed Walsh confirming her stance, no compromise on Vivian's terms. His response was resolute. "They've agreed to a meeting tomorrow. Be ready." The meeting at Walsh and Foster's office was a battlefield. The conference room's polished table, a stage for truth. Lauren entered, her posture rigid, Evelyn and Richard trailing, their faces etched with unease. Ms. Foster, their lawyer, carried a folder, her smile thin. Nathan sat beside Elise, his presence a quiet strength. Edward opened with steel. "The trust's terms are clear. Elise's residency rights were violated and $120,000 was misappropriated. We have evidence, letters, journals, financial records, a witness." He nodded to Mrs. Kessler, who joined as Vivian's contact. Her testimony damning. Lauren's eyes darted, her facade cracking. Ms. Foster countered, "My clients propose a settlement, condo, partial repayment, no oversight." Elise's voice cut through, unwavering. "Vivian's terms are non-negotiable. Full oversight, full repayment, or we go to court." Lauren's face flushed. "You're greedy, Elise," she spat. "We gave you a home, and you're tearing us apart." Elise met her gaze, the truth seeker unflinching. "You locked me out, Lauren. You stole my future. Vivian saw you for what you are." Evelyn's tears fell, Richard's silence a confession. Nathan spoke, his voice steady. "Vivian warned me about you, Lauren. She knew you'd try to crush Elise." The room stilled. Vivian's letter distributed its words, exposing Lauren's jealousy and her parents' complicity. Ms. Foster's confidence faltered as she read, whispering to Lauren. Edward Press signed the proposal, condo oversight, no contact or face legal consequences. Lauren's jaw clenched, but she nodded, her defiance broken. As they left, Evelyn's eyes pleaded, but Elise turned away. "I don't need your regret," she thought. Nathan's hand on her shoulder was enough. "You're Vivian's fire," he said. Elise clutched the pendant, the restorer ready to build. The accelerator program awaited her sketches, a promise to Vivian, to herself. The black SUV was gone, its threat dissolved in the light of truth. Vivian's words echoed, "Your fire, not clay." Elise was no longer the exiled dreamer, but the restorer, carving a path where her dreams could soar. The Asheville courtroom hummed with quiet anticipation, its oak-paneled walls and high windows framing a moment of reckoning for Elise Monroe. She stood at the witness stand, Vivian's pendant glinting against her chest, a silver wing that carried the weight of her grandmother's faith. Psychologically, Elise embodied the archetype of the victorious restorer. Her journey from the exiled dreamer, cast out by her sister Lauren's chilling text, "You're not part of this family anymore," to the truth seeker, culminating in this crucible of justice. The gallery held a sparse but poignant crowd. Nathan Porter, her cousin, his nod a steady anchor. Mrs. Kessler Vivian's silent sentinel. And a handful of local designers from the Fashion Accelerator, their presence a testament to Elise's emerging voice. I'm not here for them, she thought, but for Vivian, and for the self I'm reclaiming. Edward Walsh Sharp in his tailored suit began with measured precision. Ms. Monroe. Why did Vivian Monroe entrust you with her legacy? Elise's voice was clear, a blade honed by years of silence. Vivian saw me when my family didn't. She left me the trust because I honored her dreams, stayed true to my own, even when Lauren, Evelyn, and Richard tried to bury them. The words landed like a gavel, the courtroom stirring. She recounted the betrayal, the changed locks barring her from the family home, the $125,000 siphoned from her creative fund for renovations, Lauren's text, a psychological guillotine, the evidence, Vivian's letters, journals, audio files, and Mrs. Kessler's testimony was a fortress dismantling the narrative of Elise as the ungrateful leech. Lauren sat across the aisle, her posture rigid. The Golden Heirs facade cracked. Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears. Richard's silence, a confession etched in his furrowed brow. Their lawyer, Ms. Foster, attempted a defense claiming the lockout was a misunderstanding and the fund's misuse an oversight. Walsh countered with steel, presenting Vivian's letter. Lauren's jealousy and your complicity could break Elise. This trust is her wings. The words silenced the room, Ms. Foster's objections faltering against the weight of Vivian's intent. Elise spoke again, her voice rising with quiet power. You stole my future, Lauren, and called it family. Vivian's trust was my shield, and I'm here to honor it. The designers in the gallery nodded their support, a psychological balm affirming Elise's place beyond her family's control. Lauren's outburst shattered the silence. You're tearing us apart, Elise, she shouted, her face flushed. You never deserved this. The judge's gavel cut her off, but Elise held her gaze unflinching. I'm done shrinking, she thought. Nathan's voice followed, calm but piercing. Vivian warned me about you, Lauren. She knew you'd try to erase Elise, just like you pressured her to change her will. The accusation was a psychological thunderclap, Lauren's face draining of color. Evelyn's tears spilled, Richard's eyes dropped, their complicity laid bare. Walsh concluded, the Vivian Monroe Trust is unequivocal. Elise's rights were violated, her funds stolen. Justice demands accountability. The judge recessed, promising a swift ruling, but Elise felt the weight of truth, already the restorer standing tall. Outside, the Blue Ridge Mountains loomed, their quiet strength mirroring Elise's own. Mrs. Kessler approached, her eyes soft. Vivian would be proud, she said, handing Elise a prayer card with Vivian's handwriting, for Elise, my fire. The gesture was a psychological anchor, tying her to a community that saw her worth. Lauren lingered nearby, her expression a mix of anger and defeat, but Elise walked past Nathan at her side. You don't need her anymore, he said, his voice steady. Elise nodded, the pendant warm against her skin. I never did, she thought, the truth seeker shedding the last of her family's chains. Back at the motel, Elise packed her belongings, her sketchbooks, and Vivian's sewing kit, a testament to her rebirth. The judge's ruling came that afternoon. The trust upheld Lauren, Evelyn, and Richard removed as trustees, the $125,000 to be repaid, and a condo purchased for Elise. The family home would remain under an independent trustee's oversight, ensuring her access if she chose it. Lauren's text arrived hours later, a final plea. We can still be family. Elise deleted it, her heart steady. Evelyn's call went to voicemail, Richard's silence unbroken. Their regret isn't my burden, she thought, the victorious restorer, free of their validation. A month later, Elise stood in her new condo, a modest one-bedroom in Asheville's vibrant River Arts District. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, catching bare walls she'd soon fill with sketches. The trust had covered the purchase and provided a stipend, giving her space to breathe. Her belongings arrived delivered by Nathan, who helped unload boxes of fabric swatches and Vivian's sketchbooks. Lauren had left the key with Mrs. Kessler, avoiding Elise entirely. Unpacking was a ritual, each item a piece of herself reclaimed. She found Vivian's sewing kit, a note inside, for my dreamer, keep sewing. Tears pricked her eyes, but they were born of strength, not sorrow. You gave me wings, she thought, tracing Vivian's handwriting. Elise threw herself into Vivian's Thread, her accelerator program, connecting her with mentors and suppliers. Her first collection, inspired by Vivian's mountain gowns and Asheville's art scene, launched online, selling out in days. A local boutique stocked her pieces, orders pouring in. It's not fame, she thought, but it's mine. She began therapy with Dr. Lisa Warren, whose gentle voice helped unravel the guilt of breaking from her family. You didn't tear them apart, Dr. Warren said. They made choices. You're making yours. The words echoed Vivian's, freeing Elise from the need for Lauren's approval or Evelyn's tears. Nathan became her anchor, their bond forged in shared loss and truth. Vivian saw you as family, he said over coffee, the kind that matters. 6 months later, an email arrived, an invitation to showcase Vivian's Thread at a regional fashion expo, a break Elise had barely dared to dream. She stood in her condo, sketches spread across the table, Vivian's pendant gleaming. You knew I could do this. She thought, her voice a whisper to her grandmother. The expo was a triumph, her designs drawing gasps, orders flooding in. Elise's world was no longer the colonial house, but a home of her own, making friends from the accelerator mentors like Sarah, Nathan's steady presence. Dr. Warren's words lingered. Family is where you're free to be you. Lauren, Evelyn, and Richard faded into silence, their lives shadowed by the trustees' oversight. Elise didn't dwell on their regret. Her focus was her future, her designs, her truth. As she stood in her condo portfolio, ready for a new investor meeting, Elise felt the weight of her journey lift. The exiled dreamer was gone, replaced by the victorious restorer, her heart a canvas of courage. Vivian's pendant caught the light, a wing soaring free. She was no longer bound by the need for her family's validation, her worth woven into every stitch of Vivian's thread. The world stretched before her, vast and vibrant, and Elise stepped into it. Her spirit unbound, her truth, a quiet flame that no betrayal could dim. In the stillness of her new home, she sketched, her pen dancing with purpose, leaving behind a single haunting truth: I am enough, and I always was.